Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I used to think the hardest part of surviving in the tower was the silence. I was wrong. Silence is predictable. You learn its rhythms. You learn what belongs and what does not. You learn when the building settles, when the wind pushes at the tarps, when the distant shapes below shuffle without purpose. Silence gives you time to think, and thinking, when controlled, is a tool. What we were dealing with now was something else entirely. Voices. Not just the familiar ones anymore. Not Noah on the other side of the console. Not Lena checking in from the river. Not the steady professionalism of 7 Whiskey Mike or the clipped coordination from Wilmington Harbor. These were new voices. Unverified voices. Voices that knew just enough to be dangerous. And they were starting to overlap. It began before sunrise on what I had stopped counting as a specific day. The notebook said 168 days since the outbreak. That was good enough. I was at the glass, coffee substitute in hand, watching a thin mist hang over the river when the approach frequency lit up. Philadelphia Tower, this is Yard. No preamble, no hesitation. Whoever it was had decided to speak. I glanced at Noah, who was already rolling his chair closer. Yard, this is Philadelphia Tower, I replied evenly. State your position and your request. A pause. Then, we're north of the river, inland from the old distribution center near Chester. We've been monitoring your transmissions for weeks. We're running low on medical supplies and vehicle fuel. We have people with mechanical skills, electrical, logistics. We're not hostile, but we're under pressure. Pressure from who? Noah asked quietly. I waited. Silence stretched just long enough to feel intentional. There's a group moving south from the tank farm area, Yard said finally. Same people you probably saw fighting near the docks. They're organized, they're not infected, they're armed, and they're taking territory. That confirmed what we had already suspected. Copy, I said. Be advised, this is an open frequency. Anything you say can be heard by others. Keep your transmission short. Understood, Yard said. That's why we're calling now. We think they're listening too. That changed the calculus. I leaned back slightly and keyed the mic again. Yard, we are not a governing authority. We don't command assets. What we can do is share information and coordinate warnings. If you're requesting a meet or transfer, that's not something we agree to over the air. Not asking for a meet, Yard said. We're asking for time. If you know where they're moving, we can stay ahead of them. I exchanged a look with Noah. This was the line we'd been expecting to cross eventually. Stand by, I said. I switched frequencies and brought up Lena's channel. Lena, Tower, you up? Her reply came fast. Go ahead. We've got a group calling themselves Yard requesting advisories, I said. They report an organized, hostile group moving south from the tank farm area. Can you confirm any movement on the riverside? There was a brief rustle on her end, the sound of someone shifting position. I've seen increased foot traffic near the bank the last 2 nights, she said. Not infected, lights at night, vehicles staged back from the water. I've been avoiding that stretch. That was enough corroboration. I went back to Yard. Yard, Tower. We can confirm increased hostile activity near the tank farm and adjacent riverbanks. We recommend avoiding eastward movement toward the docks and staying clear of major access roads. Use secondary routes and minimize engine noise. There was an audible exhale on the other end. That helps, Yard said. Thank you. You'll check in at scheduled windows only, I added. No continuous chatter. If you're compromised, you prioritize your people, not the radio. Understood, Yard said. We'll be listening. The carrier dropped. Noah swiveled his chair to face me fully. We're officially in the middle now. We were the moment we answered the first call, I said. This just makes it obvious. The rest of the morning was consumed by verification. We cross-checked Lena's observations with Marcus at harbor. He confirmed increased scouting activity along the roadways feeding the tank farm, heavier than usual, disciplined movements. These aren't scavengers, Marcus said. They're probing, watching responses, looking for weak points. And they're listening, Noah added after the call ended. Yes, I said. Which means every word we say from now on has weight. We adjusted our procedures that same day. Guard calls were reduced to 10-minute windows instead of 15. Any advisory transmissions were phrased generically, without specific coordinates. We stopped naming locations on open channels and switched to descriptive references that only our established contacts would understand. The tower went from being a beacon to being a filter. That afternoon I took the Cherokee up alone. Noah stayed in the tower to monitor radios and ground movement. The plan was simple. 1 high orbit to assess the tank farm and inland routes feeding it, then back down. No low passes, no lingering. The air was rougher than it had been earlier in the week. Thermals kicked at the wings as I climbed through 2,000 feet. I kept the mixture leaned conservatively and the engine parameters right where I wanted them. From altitude, the tank farm was unmistakable. Rows of cylindrical tanks, some rust-streaked, some still bearing faded hazard placards. Access roads branched like veins into the surrounding industrial land. And there, parked in the shadow of a warehouse, were vehicles that hadn't been there before. 3 trucks, 2 pickups and a box truck, all positioned for quick departure. No abandoned posture, no doors hanging open. I circled once, wide. I didn't see people at first. Then movement near the loading dock. Figures stepping out, scanning, repositioning. One raised binoculars. I banked away immediately. Tower 312 Bravo, I said, keeping my voice steady. Confirmed multiple operational vehicles at the tank farm, at least 3. Personnel present, organized posture. They are actively observing air traffic. Copy, Noah replied. No transmissions received while you were airborne. Keep it that way, I said. I'm inbound. I brought the Cherokee back down without incident and rolled her into the hangar. As I shut down the engine, the weight of what I'd seen settled in. They weren't just moving, they were watching. Back in the tower, we updated the map. Red arcs expanded, notes multiplied. Yard's position was now marked as at risk. We can warn them, Noah said. But that might also confirm to anyone listening that they matter. Exactly, I said. Information cuts both ways. We decided on a compromise. That evening, during the scheduled window, I made a general advisory on guard. All stations monitoring, be advised. Increased organized human activity observed near industrial zones south of the city. Avoid predictable routes. Maintain noise discipline. Tower out. It was vague. It was unsatisfying. It was necessary. The response came later than expected. Not on guard. On the old ground frequency. Tower, a new voice said. Calm, confident. We hear you. I felt my pulse spike, but my voice stayed even. Station calling tower, identify yourself. A faint chuckle. Names don't matter yet, just wanted to let you know we appreciate the warning. We're professionals too. Noah's eyes met mine. Be advised, the voice continued. We're not interested in the tower. Too exposed. Too much effort. But people who rely on it, they're worth knowing about. The carrier dropped. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. "They're testing us," Noah said finally. "Yes," I said. "And they just told us something important." "What's that?" "They think we're important enough to talk to," I said. "But not important enough to fear. That's a narrow window." We slept in shifts that night. Nothing happened immediately. No gunfire, no visible movement toward the airport. That was almost worse. Action you can respond to. Waiting forces you to imagine. 2 days later, Riverside called. "Tower," their voice said, strained. "We're seeing movement on the road north of us. Same description as the tank farm group. Vehicles, spotters. They haven't approached yet, but they're close." "How close?" I asked. "Within a mile," Riverside said. "They're moving slow, deliberate." Noah leaned in. "Ask about defensive posture." "Riverside Tower, what's your fortification status?" "Perimeter fencing is intact," they said. "We've got elevated positions and limited firearms, but we can't withstand a coordinated assault." I closed my eyes briefly. "We can't send help," Noah said quietly. "We don't have that capability." "No," I agreed, "but we can buy them time." I switched channels and brought up Harbor. "Marcus," I said. "Riverside is about to get pressured. Same group from the tank farm. Any assets you can move to distract or delay without direct engagement?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was measured. "There's a fuel convoy we've been planning to move tonight," he said. 2 trucks. If we roll them north along the river road, visible but guarded, it might draw attention." "Risky," I said. "Everything is now," he replied. I switched to Lena. "Lena, can you stage movement on the water tonight near Riverside's latitude? No contact, just presence." She exhaled audibly. "I can do that. Lights low, engine quiet. I won't linger." That was the extent of our power. We weren't generals, we were coordinators, nudging a chaotic system and hoping it responded the way we expected. That night, from the tower, we watched it unfold. Headlights appeared along the river road to the south. Harbor's convoy. Controlled spacing. No panic. A professional move. On the river, Lena's barge slid into view like a shadow, engine barely disturbing the water. And near Riverside, the inland group hesitated. We couldn't hear what they were saying, but we could see them reposition. Vehicles turning. Scouts pulling back. They didn't attack Riverside that night. Instead, they followed the lights. When dawn came, Riverside was still intact. Their transmission was quiet, almost reverent. "You saved us time," they said. "That might have saved lives." "We didn't save anything," I replied. "We just moved attention." "But you chose to," Riverside said. "That matters." After the call ended, Noah leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. "We just escalated," he said. "Yes," I replied. "But we also drew a line. From that point on, the tower stopped being just an observer. We became a node in a living system. Fragile, imperfect, but adaptive. And somewhere out there, the people who had tested us were recalculating." I stood at the glass that evening, watching the sun sink behind the city, and understood something with absolute clarity. The infected were no longer the greatest threat around Philadelphia International Airport. People were. And the next phase of survival was going to demand more than hiding, more than flying, more than talking. It was going to demand choices, and not all of them would be clean. The night after Riverside held, I didn't go back to the cot. I stayed in the tower chair with the radios low and the glass dark, watching the airport breathe. The big fields of concrete reflected the moonlight in dull patches, broken by the slow, irregular movement of infected that drifted where our makeshift channels allowed them to drift. It wasn't control, not really, but it was influence, and influence carried responsibility whether I wanted it or not. What bothered me most wasn't that the hostile group had backed off. It was how easily they had. People don't abandon pressure that cleanly unless they're testing boundaries or reassessing priorities. Either way, it meant they were thinking ahead, not reacting in panic. That put them closer to us, mentally, than I liked. Just before 0300 hours, the approach frequency crackled again. "Tower," the same calm voice said. "You made a move?" I didn't answer immediately. Silence is still a tool, even now. "Tower," the voice repeated. "We saw the convoy, we saw the barge. Coordinated timing, clean execution. That wasn't luck." Noah was awake now, standing a step behind me, arms folded, eyes on the radios. "You're speaking on an open frequency," I finally said. "State your purpose." A pause. "Not static, consideration." "Call us Freeway," the voice said. "For now, we operate mobile. We're not infected, we're not raiders, and we're not interested in pointless firefights. We're interested in leverage." Noah exhaled slowly through his nose. "Leverage over what?" I asked. "Movement," Freeway replied. "Fuel. Roads, river crossings. You understand this better than most. You're doing it from a tower. We do it from the ground." "Then why call us?" I asked. "Because," Freeway said, "you just demonstrated you can shift attention without firing a shot. That makes you dangerous in a way bullets aren't." That was not a compliment. I chose my next words carefully. "We don't coordinate offensives. We provide advisories. That's it." A faint chuckle. Everyone tells themselves that at first. Noah leaned closer and murmured, "They're fishing." I nodded slightly. "If you have something to say it," I told Freeway. "Otherwise, clear the frequency." "Fair enough," Freeway said. "Here's what you should know. The region is going to fracture. Small groups won't survive long unless they align or disappear. Some will align with you, some with us. Some won't get the choice. You're already a hub whether you admit it or not." "Then you're wasting time trying to intimidate us," I said, "because we're not leaving." Another pause. Longer this time. "No," Freeway said. "You're not. That's the interesting part." The carrier dropped. For a long moment, the tower was quiet again. Noah finally spoke. "That wasn't a threat." "No," I agreed. "That was reconnaissance." We logged the call, flagged it red, and added a new note beneath it. "Freeway organized, mobile, strategic, listening." Sleep came in fragments after that. The next morning, the helicopter checked in early. "Tower, 7 Whiskey Mike," the pilot said. "We've got a situation." I straightened immediately. "Go ahead." "We diverted north overnight after receiving multiple distress calls that didn't line up," he said. "Same phrasing, same timing, different claimed locations. Someone's replaying recorded transmissions." "Confirmed," I said. "We suspected as much." "It gets better," he continued. "One of the calls referenced your tower specifically. Claimed you were coordinating an evacuation flight today." That sent a cold line straight down my spine. "That is false," I said immediately. "No such operation exists." "We know," the pilot said, "but people on the ground may not. We observed movement toward the airport perimeter from 3 different directions before daylight. Not infected. Vehicles." Noah and I looked at each other. "How many?" I asked. "Hard to say," 7 Whiskey Mike replied. "At least 4 vehicles. Possibly more staging out of sight." That explained Freeway's timing. "They're using your voice to bait people," Noah said quietly, "and now they're watching who shows up." 7 Whiskey Mike, I said. "Do not approach the airport today unless fired upon or forced. Stay mobile. We'll handle what we can from here." "Understood," the pilot said. "We'll stay high and wide. Call if you need eyes." We moved immediately. First priority, visibility. I powered up the generator briefly, not for comfort, but to bring the tower systems fully online. Exterior floodlights along selected taxiways came up in controlled sections, not all at once. The goal wasn't illumination, it was signaling. This place was not empty. Second priority, information control. I transmitted on guard. "All stations monitoring, advisory. There's no organized evacuation flight operating out of Philadelphia International Airport. Any transmissions claiming otherwise are false. Treat with extreme caution." I repeated it twice, spaced out, calm and firm. Third priority, observation. From the tower glass, we watched the perimeter roads. The first vehicle appeared just after sunrise. A dark SUV, moving slow, windows down, someone in the passenger seat scanning with binoculars. It stopped short of the fence breach we'd been managing and idled there for several minutes. Then another. Pickup truck, utility rack, no markings. They didn't cross. They waited. "That's restraint," Noah said. "They're counting heads." "And listening," I added. We didn't give them anything else. No movement from the hangars. No vehicles rolling. No radios chattering beyond our advisories. The Cherokee stayed silent and hidden. Lena stayed clear of the river stretch nearest the airport. Harbor held their convoy inside the port fencing. After nearly an hour, the vehicles turned away one by one. They'd learned something. So had we. That afternoon, Riverside checked in again. "They came close," Riverside said. "But they didn't push. They asked questions instead." "About what?" I asked. "About the tower," Riverside said. "About flights. About who listens to you." That settled it. Freeway wasn't just competing for resources. They were mapping influence. That night, as the airport lights faded back into darkness and the infected resumed their slow, wandering loops across the runways, I stood at the glass and accepted a truth I'd been circling for days. The tower was no longer just shelter. It was a signal. And as long as that signal existed, people would move toward it. Some for help, some for advantage, some to dismantle it. We could shut it down, go dark, fade back into silence. Or we could stay visible and shape what came next. I rested my hand on the radio console, feeling the faint vibration of powered equipment under my palm. "We're staying," I said quietly. Noah nodded. Then we planned for pressure. Outside, somewhere beyond the fence, engines started and stopped as people repositioned for whatever tomorrow would bring. And above it all, 200 feet up, the tower kept watching. By morning, the airport had settled into a pattern I didn't like. Not the infected. They were still doing what they always did, wandering, pausing, turning, drifting along the invisible rails we'd built with debris. Predictable enough that I could glance down and know where the densest pockets were likely to form. It was the humans. You can't see a person thinking from 200 feet up, but you can see the evidence of planning. Vehicles that stop in places that give good sight lines. Scouts that never expose themselves for long. The absence of panic, the way they test, back off, then return at a different angle. Freeway hadn't attacked. They hadn't even tried to breach the fence. They were doing something worse. They were measuring us. I stood at the tower glass with binoculars and tracked the perimeter road west of the cargo ramps. Nothing at first. Then, around 0900, a white panel van appeared and rolled slow along the fence line, almost like it was sightseeing. It stopped near the breach we'd been managing. The driver stayed inside. Someone in the passenger seat stepped out, stretched like they'd been sitting for a while, and walked a small circle. Casual movements, but the head stayed on a swivel the whole time. They weren't looking for infected. They were looking for signs of life. I dropped the binoculars and turned to Noah. "They're back." Noah moved to the glass and watched for 10 seconds. "Same behavior," he said. "Probe, wait, withdraw." "Or bait," I said. "They're waiting for us to respond." We didn't. Then the radio chirped and the day changed shape. "Tower, 7 Whiskey Mike," the helicopter pilot said, voice sharp. "We've got a forced landing aircraft inbound your area." My stomach tightened instantly. "Say again." "Single engine, high wing, looks like a Cessna 172 or similar," he said. "Engine rough, losing altitude. They're trying to put it down on the river flats north of you. 2 souls on board, 1 injured. They're not responding coherently on guard." Noah and I looked at each other. That kind of event does 2 things at once. It creates an urgent problem, and it creates an opportunity for anyone watching. "Can you escort?" I asked. "Negative," 7 Whiskey Mike said. "We're low on fuel. We can keep eyes on them for 2 minutes, maybe 3. Then we have to break south. But I can give you their approximate touchdown point." "Do it," I said. He gave me the best reference he could. North Bank, near a distinctive bend, close to a cluster of half-submerged docks and an old warehouse roof with collapsed skylights. A location I could picture from our own flights. Then he added the line that made my throat go dry. "And Tower. There are vehicles moving toward that river section already. Multiple. They were staged. This may not be an accident." The transmission cut. For a second, the tower felt too small for the air in it. Noah spoke first. "They're using the forced landing to draw you out." "Maybe," I said. "Or it's real, and they're exploiting it." Either way, the outcome was the same. If we did nothing, 2 people might die on the river flats. If we went, we risked walking into a trap and exposing that the tower would respond. I hated that those were the choices. I grabbed the handheld and switched to the frequency we used for internal coordination. "Lena, Tower, emergency. You up?" Her reply was immediate. "Go." "Aircraft forced down near the North River Flats, close to the old collapsed roof warehouse," I said. 2 souls, 1 injured. There are vehicles moving toward them. Can you get eyes or reach them faster than we can?" A pause, then a hard, practical answer. "I'm south of that bend, tied off in cover," she said. "I can be there in 20 minutes if the current plays nice, but if vehicles are already moving, they'll beat me." "Understood," I said. "Do not engage. If you can observe from the water and provide updates, do it." "Copy," she said. "I'll move. Lights off." I switched to harbor. "Marcus, Tower, emergency traffic." He answered on the first ring. "Go ahead." "Downed light aircraft north of the airport along the river flats," I said. 2 people, 1 injured. Hostile vehicles possibly inbound. Do you have any asset that can create a distraction without direct firefight? Marcus exhaled. "I've got 1 truck that can move and look loud," he said. "But that's 30 miles of exposure and it won't get there in time. The best I can do is stage a visible convoy move to pull eyes south again, like last time." "Do it," I said. "Even if it only splits attention." "Copy," he said. "I'm rolling in 15. Noah had already started gathering gear. "Truck, minimal load," he said. "Medical kit, radios, no hero stuff." I didn't argue. We both knew the rules. If we went, it would be fast, it would be quiet, and it would be conditional. If the scene looked like an ambush, we'd leave. That felt ugly to admit, but honesty keeps you alive. We moved down the tower stairwell at a controlled pace, fast enough to matter, slow enough to listen. At the base, I cracked the ground door and scanned. Clear. The F-250 started on the first turn. That diesel rumble always felt louder when you knew people were listening for it. We rolled out through the perimeter road and angled north toward the river access routes we'd marked on our maps. The city streets were still dead, but that didn't mean empty. You learn quickly that empty is a lie. It just means not visible yet. Noah kept the shotgun across his lap, muzzle down. I kept my hands on the wheel and my eyes cycling. Road, mirrors, intersections, rooftops, sidewalks. When we reached the last stretch before the river flats, we killed the engine and coasted into cover behind a line of abandoned landscaping trucks. From there, we continued on foot. The air smelled like wet mud and old diesel. The river was close enough that I could hear the slow slap of water against concrete. We moved in a crouch along the backside of a low berm, keeping the skyline of derelict warehouses between us and the flats. Then we heard it. A high, uneven sputter. Not a running engine, something trying to run, failing, then catching again. I eased up just enough to see over the berm. The aircraft was down. A small high-wing Cessna sat at a crooked angle in the mud, nose gear sunk, right wingtip dipped. The fuselage was intact, no smoke, no fire. Whoever had put it down had done it carefully. Two figures were near it. One was standing, hunched, moving with urgency. The other was sitting on the ground by the left main gear, head down. They were alive. And then I saw the third thing. A vehicle. Dark pickup, creeping along the access road at the edge of the flats, slow enough that its tires barely made sound. Two more vehicles followed at a distance. One SUV, one van. They were not here to rescue. Noah didn't need to ask. His eyes told me he'd seen it too. "We can't get them out past those vehicles," he whispered. "Not without getting pinned." "Not by road," I whispered back, "but maybe by water." I keyed the handheld, voice low. "Lena, tower. We have visual, 3 hostile vehicles inbound to downed aircraft. You are our best extraction. ETA? Static then. 10 minutes, maybe less. I'm coming in behind the docks." "Copy, no lights, stay low." We had 10 minutes. 10 minutes to keep 2 strangers alive without revealing ourselves as a permanent asset worth attacking. I felt the familiar cold focus settle in. "Okay," I whispered to Noah. "We're not engaging unless forced. But we can buy time, we can misdirect." He nodded once. "Noise elsewhere?" "Exactly," I said. We backed down behind the berm and moved laterally until we found a rusted stack of metal drums and a collapsed fence section. Beyond it was a narrow alley between 2 warehouses that led back toward the access road. I pulled the flare gun from my pack. I hated using it. Bright light is a beacon. But sometimes a beacon pointed in the right direction is a weapon. I angled it upward into the alley mouth and fired. The flare burst into bright, sizzling red and arced over the warehouse roof, landing out of sight deeper inland. Immediately I heard it. The subtle change in engine note as the leading pickup accelerated toward the flare's direction. Suspicious and hungry, the SUV followed. The van hesitated, then rolled after them. They weren't certain what it meant, but they couldn't ignore it. Noah stared at me for half a second like he was measuring whether I'd just saved us or doomed us. 10 minutes, I reminded him. We just made them chase a question. We moved back toward the berm and watched. The vehicles were now angling away from the aircraft, peeling inland toward the flare's glow. Not all of them fast, more like cautious hunters moving toward a sound. The standing survivor near the Cessna saw them turn and seemed confused for a moment. Then he started dragging the seated person toward the waterline, toward the shadowed docks. Smart. I keyed my radio again, keeping it tight. "Downed aircraft, this is Philadelphia Tower. If you can hear me, move to the docks on the north side. Stay low. Help is coming by water." There was no reply, just a faint carrier, then silence. But the standing figure jerked his head up, scanning, as if he'd heard something. He couldn't know where it came from. He didn't need to. He dragged faster. Minutes crawled. The flare's glow faded, the vehicle slowed, uncertain, and began to turn back toward the flats. And then, on the river, something dark and low slid into view. Lena's barge. No lights, no obvious engine noise, just a shadow moving with the current. She brought it in behind the partially submerged docks, using them as cover. The crane silhouette rose behind her like a bent arm. The standing survivor reached the dock edge just as the first hostile pickup rolled back into view at the far end of the access road. Noah's hand tightened on the shotgun strap. "Not yet," I whispered. Lena threw a line out. Smooth, practiced. The survivor caught it, tied it fast, and began hauling the injured person toward the barge's low deck. The hostile pickup accelerated, now fully aware that something was happening. I raised the Ruger and sighted down the barrel. Not at the driver, not at the windshield, at the front tire. A .2 is not a stopping rifle, but physics doesn't care about caliber when you put a hole where air needs to stay contained. I fired once. The pickup's front tire snapped into a wobble immediately. The truck fishtailed, the driver overcorrected, and it slid into the mud at the road edge, stalled at a bad angle. No screams, no gore, just mechanical failure. Noah exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for an hour. The SUV behind it braked hard, stopped, and reversed, suddenly cautious. They hadn't expected resistance that precise. Lena's barge was already backing off, line cut, deck clear. The two survivors were aboard. Lena's voice came over the radio, tight and controlled. "I've got them. I'm moving. Meet me at the bend south, the one we used last time." "Copy," I said. "Go." We withdrew immediately. No lingering, no victory lap. The SUV was still there, now stopped, possibly watching for muzzle flashes. We didn't give them any. We moved back to the truck, started it only long enough to reposition, and headed for the rendezvous point. When we reached Lena's Bend, the barge was already there, tucked behind cover, engine idling low. The survivors looked rough. The standing one was a man, late 20s or early 30s, wiry build, sunburned face, eyes kept flicking towards every sound. He wore a headset around his neck like he didn't know what else to do with it. Pilot habit. The injured one was a woman. Same age range, holding her ribs, breathing shallow. Lena hopped down to the bank and spoke first. "You two almost got yourselves swallowed," she said, not unkindly. "Who are you?" The man swallowed. "My name's Grant," he said. "Grant Halverson. I used to fly survey work out of Northeast Philly. This is my sister, Claire. We've been moving between rooftops and we thought we heard an evacuation call. We thought the airport was active." My stomach clenched. "The bait transmissions," Noah muttered. Grant nodded, shame and anger mixing in his eyes. "We chased it. We came in too low, too slow, engine started running rough. Bad fuel maybe, or contamination. And I had to put it down. I saw those vehicles before we even touched. They were waiting." Claire winced as she shifted. "They weren't going to help," she whispered. "They were going to take the plane." I looked at Lena and Noah, then back at Grant. "There is no evacuation," I said, voice steady. There's only what we build ourselves. Grant stared at me. You're the tower voice. Yes, I said. His eyes widened slightly. Then it's real. You're real. Yeah, Noah said. We're real, and now you're here. Lena crossed her arms. What's her injury? Claire spoke through shallow breaths. I fell hard on impact, ribs may be cracked, it hurts to breathe deep. Lena glanced at me. Hospital, she said immediately. I nodded. University City, I said. We can coordinate a rooftop landing if 7 Whiskey Mike's available. Or we can bring her in by ground if the roads stay quiet. But the helicopter's safer and faster. Noah was already pulling out the medical kit. He wasn't a medic, but he knew enough. He checked for obvious bleeding, none, checked her breathing rate, assessed skin color, and stabilized her posture so she wasn't twisting. Grant watched him, jaw tight. Those people, Freeway or whatever, they're using the tower to bait flyers, he said. They've got recordings. They're pushing them on different frequencies. They're collecting aircraft like trophies. Or tools, I said. They want the mobility. Grant nodded. They're not just taking planes, they're taking pilots. That statement hit harder than I expected. Because if they were capturing pilots alive, it meant they understood exactly how valuable skills were now. It also meant they were willing to coerce people into using those skills. I keyed the radio. 7 Whiskey Mike, Tower, Emergency Medical. We have 1 patient with suspected rib fractures and breathing pain. Can you support a rooftop pickup at University City? Static. Then the pilot's voice. Tower, 7 Whiskey Mike, copy. Fuel is tight, but we can make 1 run. 10 minutes, confirm pad status. Pad will be clear, I said. We'll have eyes. I turned to Lena. Can you get them to the hospital roof access point? She nodded. I can get them to the base. They can climb if she can handle stairs. Claire shook her head slightly. Stairs will be hard. Noah looked at me. We can drive them from the river bend to the hospital entrance. Keep it fast, keep it quiet. Then elevator to the roof if the elevator still works. If not, we get staff to bring a stretcher down. Okay, I said. We do it. Grant looked from me to Noah to Lena, disbelief on his face. Why? He asked. Why help us? I didn't sugarcoat it. Because we don't let people get harvested if we can prevent it, I said. And because your plane being down on that mudflat is a signal. If we let them take it, they get stronger. Grant swallowed and nodded once. Then I'm with you, he said. Whatever you need. We moved. Lena kept low along the bank and slipped the barge to a hidden tie-up. Noah and I loaded Claire into the truck carefully, supporting her torso to keep the pain manageable. Grant climbed in and kept watching behind us like he expected headlights to appear at any second. As we drove toward University City, I felt the invisible line tighten around our world. Freeway had baited aircraft into traps near the airport. We had just disrupted that. We had also just added 2 more people to our network, one of them a pilot, and we'd done it publicly enough that anyone watching the river flats might put the pieces together. We were no longer a rumor. We were a problem. And now, whether we liked it or not, Freeway knew we would intervene. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.